So good evening everybody to this magic night of Kanban tonight. The music you just heard, who knows it? Alan Parsons' project, Eye in the Sky. The song is called Sirius, and Sirius, we took it because Sirius is the most bright star you can see in a night evening, and it gives us the most focus. So tonight the focus is all about Kanban, and I'm very happy that you're all here. I'm also very happy to all my colleagues and all our colleagues looking from the other countries to this live stream. And a second symbol we had tonight is the cherry blossom. You saw it on the screen, and the magic of Kanban. The cherry blossom is a very famous symbol in Japan. The cherry blossom is the sign, it's called sakura, and it's the sign for renewal and optimism from the one side, but also a symbol how life is fleeting, because you have those beautiful cherry blossoms in Japan, and they just live very shortly. So it's all about renewal, optimism, but also the shortness of life. And when we talk about Kanban, we talk a lot about change and change management, and this is also why we took this symbol of the cherry blossoms, and you will see it back later on in the presentation from David as well. Welcome here to SPAR ICS. A lot of you are colleagues I see here, also former colleagues, and also former colleagues from people I worked with over the last years. My name is Erik Jan Kaak. I'm responsible here for innovation at ICS, but also the whole area of performance and coaching teams to get even better as we are now. And before I tell you something about SPAR ICS, I think it's the best thing to show you a short video so you see what we're doing here. So let's see this video.
We improve, grow and create.
We design the future of retail for millions of people.
It connects us, and that's what drives us.
We are part of SPAR Austria Group.
We never stand still. There is always room for improvement, and so continuous improvement is our daily business. I think all software engineers are quite passionate about software development, and so they're really interested in creating high-quality software solutions for the customers, but also for themselves. We provide really attractive career paths for our engineers for e-commerce, content websites, POS, or also low-code applications.
The vibe at SPAR ICS is really familiar, and it is also familiar with the members of the board when we are discussing new solutions for the future of retail. We have more than 300 projects for all the business units within the SPAR Group. These projects are supporting more than 90,000 employees in over 3,000 stores in 8 countries. I'm happy if I can see customers using our new projects in real life. This is a great honor of work for us.
Working with people from other countries is for me a great opportunity to meet other cultures, to see other perspectives, and to see a different solution for the same problem.
There is an incredible thrill when you know how many customers rely on our daily work. In IT there is always a chance that something could go wrong, but when we are facing a very critical situation, the team cohesion is awesome. Then everyone pulls together, and that's the moment where we can see that we can really rely on each other.
Our significant essence is people development, supporting the personal work life and the professional mission. Over the last 15 years, we consequently worked on our strategy to create business value. Now we are in a position where we can say that we are able to create the future of retail. The ICS team is unique because we have experts in place for all the disciplines you can imagine in the whole world of IT and technology. I'm really focused on my people, and if there is any positive event, I'm thinking of my team and of my people, and I'm really proud of them. Let's create retail future. Join our team and play to win.
So this is basically what we're doing here, not only here in Salzburg, but in total in 5 different countries with a huge group of people, very fantastic people we have the privilege working with every day. Kanban, do you know what the original meaning of Kanban is? Kanban are the traditional shop signs that shops or their shops put on the wall, put on the doors in Japan. So, for example, this is a traditional Kanban, about 200 years old, of a grocery store. So when you walked around the streets in Tokyo, for example, you saw on top of the buildings and next to the on the walls those signs hanging, and you know exactly what this merchant was selling you. So this is a late 19th century Kanban for a greengrocer. So this could be one of the first SPAR shops, if you want. In fact, the city of Salzburg is the capital city of Kanban. Right? When you go through the Getreidegasse, you see all those cast iron signs on the walls, and basically these are Kanbans as well. And in the modern world, these are Kanbans. Right? They show you the sign that this is the famous Shibuya crossing in Tokyo, where you have all those LED signs of companies showing off the products. So these are Kanbans as well. And when we talk about Kanban, we talk about change and change management. And I thought I invited 2 people today on stage. The first was the management guru of the stars. His name is Conor McConnor, and he will be on stage as well. And then I knew this other guy. His name was Robert Finan, and he's a principal agile coach as well in Vienna. So I called them both, but basically only one guy came. So to start the evening up, Robert, it's all for you.
We go. Just proving my coaching credentials, okay, by showing I can use a timer, I hope. Hi guys, Robert Finan, as Eric said, I'm going to do a wee talk with you, so to speak, that's a little bit different. I'd like to go into a little bit of role play with you this evening, okay? So I would like you as an audience not to be people who may be Scrum Masters or Agile coaches or Kanban aficionados or managers who are interested in using Lean or Agile or Scrum to improve things in the company. I would like you to be a different set of people because I'm going to be a different person talking to you. Okay, so I would like you, okay, all to be a group of middle managers. Now, you're not just the squeezed middle, okay? You are middle managers who are afraid of an agile transformation that is coming your way. Okay, you are planking it. I'm trying not to curse here, Eric. You guys are really shitting it, okay? Look, this agile transformation is coming. You've heard bad things about agile transformations, and you are worried about this. You're worried about your status. You're worried about your career. You're worried about how far you have worked your way up the ladder for just come tumbling off because an agile transformation is coming, okay? This is who I'd like you to be. So feel free to boo if I say Scrum Master or Agile Coach, okay? Just go against type. A little bit of a trigger warning for you. Now, I'm going to be Conor McConnor, and I'm going to rapidly talk at you like a TV evangelist in America, explaining to you how you can survive this agile transformation. Even better, I'm going to help you sabotage this agile transformation. The key point here... You're getting it, this is good. Yeah, we're getting there, okay? So I'm going to transfer, this is the reason, actually, this is role play, except for me, I have a suit on, which never happens unless it's a communion or a job interview, and so it's cosplay for me, okay? I am now going to be Conor McConnor, okay? Welcome to Agile Transformations and How to Survive Them, a Middle Manager's Guide, okay? Yes. So, look, I was at a conference there not so long ago, and I swear to God, there was a presentation up there, and what it said up on the slide was, it said, dethrone bosses. Okay, now I'm going to translate dethrone bosses into pretty simply get rid of managers. Okay, this was the quintessence of what they were saying. And as we will see as we go a little bit further on, Agile doesn't really love managers an awful lot. And if they could, they'd sort of have a world without managers. So there's a basic threat that we have here, and you can't miss it. I mean, business agility is everywhere at the moment. It's boring virtually at this stage, okay? It's all over. If you take a look at LinkedIn, which is admitted, it's Instagram for our work lives, but without the filters. It's like, all you're going to see, all these people advertising how brilliantly they're doing some agile transformation, how cool it's going. The hashtags are everywhere. You can't avoid it. You go to the Harvard Business Review, you're going to get C-level agility. Agile is eating the world. You're probably going to get something that says, go swim with dolphins and learn agile. You cannot avoid it. It's everywhere, okay? Now, you might be thinking with the, this seems like there's an agile apocalypse coming. Okay, so I've got my first bit of good news for you managers, okay? This agile apocalypse has been coming for the last over 20 years. And it is coming in slow motion. Because if we're honest, not a lot has changed. If you look at it, it's been 22 years coming. What's really changed? So this is the good news. We probably are safe. There's probably more danger from global warming to us than there is from an agile apocalypse. Yeah, this is what I was thinking, then I realized afterwards I was wrong. Apparently it's artificial intelligence that's going to do it for us. Who'd have known? But there you go. Used to be the agile apocalypse, now it's going to be artificial intelligence, okay? It's coming for us. So, but it's going to take its time. It is taking its time. So you might be wondering, if we're doing this then, why come to this talk? Why are you paying 500 euros a head to listen to me explain to you how to survive an agile transformation? Basically, agile transformations, okay, they're a rite of passage as a manager these days. You are not a real manager unless you have at least one agile transformation behind you, preferably two. Okay? You're not a real manager otherwise. You know this because you're sitting out, you're up at the Haas house looking down the Stephansdom, talking to your manager buddies, and somebody rolls their sleeve up like this and says, see that? And they go, what's that? What's that scar there? It looks kind of nasty. Kanban. 2 years at Kanban, okay? That's not a bad scar, okay? You had it hard. And then some other guy sits and he goes, yeah, look at this. And he goes, whoop! And everyone's going, oh my God, what was that? And he goes, 3 years of Scrum, 4 Scrum Masters, okay? And then there's probably some guy in the corner like this, kind of looking away like that, and you go, what about you? You must have something to show. And he goes, no, we did SAFE. No scars to show for SAFE. So basically, you're going to have to go through an agile transformation. It is unavoidable today. Business agility is everywhere. Every business has to go agile. It basically doesn't matter where you are in the company. You'll probably get some form of agile transformation coming over you. So it's just something we have to take care of these days, be able to look back at. So now, the first thing they'll come at you when you start this off, they're going to come with the Agile Manifesto. Now, this sounds like it sounds big, doesn't it? It sounds great. The Agile Manifesto. It sounds like the Communist Manifesto. You're thinking 300 pages of densely written text where you think, this is going to be political, this is going to be deep, this is going to go places, right? It's 4 values and 12 principles, and it was written in an afternoon. That's the Agile Manifesto, okay? But that's not the first. This is the winning point you're getting to start with on this one, okay? First starting point. First important clarity to be brought into the whole Agile discussion. It's not the Agile Manifesto. That's the website, agilemanifesto.org. Okay? What's it called? The real name. It's the Manifesto for Agile Software Development. Can you see the word business in there anywhere? Because I can't. It is not written for business. It's the Manifesto for Agile Software Development. Those 2 words are really important. Now, to put this in context, because it's kind of good, lots of things have changed. Agile, inspect and adapt, let's improve it. No, not the manifesto. It's still the same 22 years later. Guys, it was the 90s, okay? It was written in 2000 and something by a bunch of, pale-faced, greasy-haired programmers. But basically, it was written back in the 90s, okay, the end of the 90s. Do you know what programming was like back? Some of you, you're too young. Programming at the end of the 90s, we're talking about, it was a team of 10 people writing something in C++ that was a spreadsheet that Borland sold. That was development back then. This is what the Agile Manifesto was written for. Okay? There's a reason there's no, you know why they came up with DevOps afterwards? Because there wasn't anything 24/7 back then. It was bloody floppy disks and CD-ROMs. Potentially shippable code meant you could put it in an envelope and send it to somebody. Okay, that was potentially shippable code. Yes, we can get the envelopes out, it's that far. Okay, and then your job was to put a whole bunch of diskettes in and pray to God you did not get a blue screen of death. That was your objective in life, okay? That was potentially shippable software. This is the world that the Agile Manifesto was written in. So when your little Agile coach and Scrum Master comes up to you, running up to you, say, hey, we need to do the Agile Manifesto, you go, well, you know it's for software teams, right? It doesn't even cover operations or security and this other stuff. Are you sure it's what we should be doing? That's the first little card you get to play. This shows you know where you are, okay? You are educated in the area of this, okay? Now, they'll also come with values, right? They'll hit you with, but they'll say, yeah, but it's good, the values are good, why can't we use them? We could just kind of broaden them slightly, you know? And the first one they have up there is the old individuals and interactions over processes and tools, which shows a basic misunderstanding of how companies work. Companies work through processes and tools. That is how we, as managers, control everybody. Because we don't trust people, so we bring in lots of processes and tools so we can follow every little move they make. And, you know, basically, I think this is how we tick and how we work. To the extent, I think what we really need is a manager's manifesto. Okay? And the first value of the manager's manifesto is going to be processes and tools over individuals and interactions. Okay? And the too long, did not read version of this is JIRA over individuals and interactions. Boom. Right? It's quite simple. You know, this is what we should be doing. Now, you might think the Agile Manifesto is bad, or the Manifesto for Agile Software Development just gets a bit long to say after a while. You might think that's bad. The really nasty one is the Scrum Guide. Okay? Now, I don't know if you're familiar with the Scrum Guide or not. It is a miraculously, continuously shrinking document that if it keeps getting any smaller is going to become the Emperor's new guide, new Scrum Guide, which is basically 0 pages, and there will still be some Agile people going, would you look what they did to the Scrum Master? Jeff and Ken are brilliant. So the Scrum Guide is the dangerous one. The Scrum Guide is basically the one that says we don't need managers. Managers do not appear in a Scrum world. It's like basically, you can imagine one of these movies where they do this voiceover, and it's like, in a world devoid of managers, Scrum teams can reach Agile Nirvana using empowerment and story points. All hail the holy trinity of product owner, Scrum Master, and development team. It is quasi-religious, lads. It's quasi-religious. It's all about the team. It's like this magic, wonderful world where if you just create a team, magical, brilliant things will happen. Apparently this team floats around with absolutely 0 context to a company or an organization or anything else around it. Now originally when they did this, they actually left a small loophole. They left a small loophole in the Scrum Guide that you could imagine managers in the Scrum Guide. Now, the only word, if you look up manage in the Scrum Guide, search for it, whatever, you'll just hear about the backlog being managed. That's all you'll find. But they left room because the teams used to be self-organizing. All the teams were self-organizing up to about a version ago, okay? And they spotted a loophole. Because self-organizing for me is basically like a football team running onto the pitch. You kind of expect the goalkeeper to know they should be in goals and the forward goes up the front and midfield should be there in the middle for the kickoff. Okay, that's what you're expecting, self-organized, right? And if you've self-organized, you can have a manager on the side of the match doing the usual manager thing where they kind of walk up and down like this looking at the match, then lose it, and then they kick the water bottle like this. There was room for a manager. They spotted this. They changed the Scrum Guide. The teams are now self-managing. We got rid of managers. We definitely do not need managers anymore because the teams are now self-managing. So if anyone's got it in for us completely, it's the Scrum side of things, okay? They're definitely going for us. So you might wonder, why are we doing this in the first place? Why should we do all this agile stuff? Why are all these articles being written? I had my teenage daughter explain to me that apparently this is something called FOMO. Fear of missing out. Okay? It's just like a social movement. If enough people are doing it, we all have to be seen to be doing it. This is very important. That seen to be doing it is a vital point that I will keep coming back to. You need to be seen to be agile because everybody's doing it. Okay? You want to be with the cool kids. You want to be, yeah, we've got Kanban boards and tribe leads. I've heard there's a backlog somewhere. You need to roll with the cool kids, okay? This is why why else would we be doing it? I mean, it's not really changing anything, but, you need to be seen to be doing it. And so this is largely, I think, why we actually have this happening. Now, when you look at it, it's probably two ways you're going to have to face up to agile transformations or agile changes. The good case is basically your boss comes to you and says, I need you to agilize your teams. And you go, yeah, I'm on it. Challenge accepted. I will be agilizing these teams, or they'll certainly be looking like it. Okay? The other option is scaling. Scaling's going to come. We'll talk about that later. Scaling will come, and that's where it's across the whole organization. Gets a bit messier. Okay? But let's go with the first one for now. You have a choice, okay, when you've been asked to get your teams agile. Okay, so next tip, next important thing to do. Here's your tip. You have a choice. Here's your choice. Kanban. Okay, Kanban, you'll understand. So Kanban is the one you want, okay? Nothing looks as agile as Kanban. Okay, Kanban is the sexiest, agile-looking thing that you can do, okay? You've got to understand, normal Scrum board, if they put it up 3 columns, to do, doing, done, okay? Kind of boring. A decent Kanban board can have 15 different phases on it, and it goes across a whole wall, and you can just make it bigger and put more work on it if you want to. It just looks so agile. And the best bit is, in a ratio, basically, from a management point of view, of actually looking agile to being agile, this is definitely the best. You can do a Kanban board, just put up the way you work at the moment, change nothing, it still looks agile. Okay? Because you've got to remember, what are the rules when it comes to Kanban? Start where you are, put up the work the way you're doing at the moment, leave it for months, then stop starting, start changing. If you do that correctly, you're back where you were at the start, with you still in charge and everything runs the way you want it to. It's ideal, okay? And if you want to get some work done as a manager, the trick is you take the pink tickets and you put them in the fire lane at the top and they go through. That's how you get the work done on a Kanban board, okay? Now, the other thing to know about the Kanban boards is that basically they're also great. You can do this as well if you want to. You can maybe go up go up to the higher levels, up to a board member. Kanban board, okay, forget, that joke didn't work. You can go up to C-level person and you show your agile chops and your lean chops, because you go up to them and you say, do you fancy a Gemba? Okay, and then you go down through the halls looking left and right, and it looks so agile, they love it. Okay, it's totally convincing. Absolutely gorgeous. That's the one you definitely should start with. Unfortunately, from a management point of view, that's sort of like level 1. Okay, that's the easy one because you've basically got it all under control, because you're not really going to get any decent scars out of that one, but you're going to get some memorable scars out of Scrum, okay, because that's also what you may have to do with. You may have to deal with Scrum. So I'm going to tell you something that's going to sound completely counterintuitive, and you're going to love this. As a manager, if you have to do Scrum, your first step dealing with Scrum is you become a qualified CSM. Okay? You think, why would I want to do that? Okay, why would I want to spend 2 days with a bunch of agile coaches and Scrum Masters? Actually, I'm going to have to bring in, sorry, I forgot. Hey, this is what happens. You try to read your notes, drink, and talk at the same time. I'm going to bring in a short abbreviation here, because otherwise I'm going to trip over my tongue even more than I'm doing at the moment. Basically, when I'm going to talk about Scrum Masters and Agile coaches, the short version of this is SMAC. Okay? I'm going to talk about singular form, SMAC, plural form, SMACs. Okay? Urban Dictionary, SMAC heads. okay? Now, the smack heads are the ones that are pretty high on agility, okay? These are the true believers, okay? These are the ones that are, as a manager, are pretty hard to stop, okay? They will keep going. You'll probably get the smacks under control fairly easily. Smack heads might offer you a bit more of a challenge. Better scars, though. Better bragging rights when you're having a beer with the lads on a Friday, okay? So, why would you want to do the Certified Scrum Master? It's pretty simple, really. First of all, okay, you're there, you can hear their words and what they use, and you can use this against them later, but basically you're there. First off, know your enemy, okay? You go there, you hear what they're talking about, you can work it, and then later on you can use it against them, okay? Know your enemy. Here's the best bit. After you've done the CSM, you are as equally qualified as any other Scrum Master out there. Okay? You are equally qualified as all the rest. Which means, when you're having an argument with the Scrum Master, with the SMAC about something that has to be done or not done, he says, you say, well, I think we should do it this way. And he says, well, I think we should do it this way. And you've both played your CSM cards. But you get to play the manager card on top of this, because you are now a certified Scrum manager. This is a level above a certified Scrum master, because you have an extra card that you play, which is, well, I decide. We disagree, we're both equally qualified on that front, but I am the manager, so I win. So this is your trump card, okay? It sounds counterintuitive, manager with a CSM. It is your trump card, because you're equally qualified. That's all you need to do. 2 days, done. I mean, come on, it's way cheaper than spending $40,000, your firstborn child, and signing off your career for the next 12 years to a company to do an MBA. So 2 days, CSM, you're equally qualified as anybody else who's a Scrum Master. It's great. Now, one of the things about that you've got to watch, though, you're the certified Scrum Manager. And remember we said you need to look like you're agile. You need to look like you're seriously into this thing, okay? So something you need to be aware of, and this is the danger with the whole Scrum thing, right? Basically, the guide used to have the phrase servant leader in it for a Scrum Master. A Scrum Master is a servant leader. That has been changed in the latest version. You know the one where they brought in self-managing, and now they've brought in leader who serves. Okay? We as managers are definitely going after the servant part, okay? Not leaders. Look, this is really important. The last thing you need as a manager is to have a leader underneath you. Leaders ferment rebellions, okay? They want change. They're not interested in keeping the status quo. As managers, my main raison d'etre is the status quo. It's literally in the definition of managing something. So I don't want this change. You don't want leaders. Now, in this thing, you might be thinking, great, don't want any leaders, don't want any trouble, don't want any rebellion, don't want to put anything down. I'll pick the summer intern as Scrum Master. Or the second junior tester from the left. Guys, you're not being you might be found out. You're not being taken seriously with that. Okay, you need to think beyond that. That's too shallow. So don't go with them. Okay, you should be going with someone like you pick somebody like the senior developer in the team. Now this is great. Senior developer probably wants to be agile. It's brilliant. The great thing about it is the senior developer is too busy. He's negotiating with the architecture, he's holding hands with the junior developers, he's writing code, he's reviewing code. He has no time to do the job properly. So this is brilliant. You have shown commitment as a manager and you've said, look, I'm taking this seriously. We are going with the senior developer. He's a senior person. He has standing in the company. Fortunately, he has zero time at all to lead a rebellion. Brilliant. You've won. Snookered. Okay? That couldn't go any better. And remember, if you want to keep up this facade, you need to look like you're into this, okay? So it's very important in your office or if you're doing Zoom calls and stuff like that as a manager, be sure to put a poster up behind you which shows your credentials as how agile you are. Now, in particular, my favorite would be, don't do agile, be agile, okay? That just reeks. My commitment to agility knows no bounds, okay? That's what you need to have up there on the wall behind you, okay? Throw a few books in there behind you as well. You do Agile Coaching by Lisa Atkins, Team Topologies. Do something like Turn the Ship Around from David Marquette. The Magic of Kanban, I'm sure that looks good on your shelf too, in German and in English. Even more commitment, okay? Put a few books, but you don't have to read them. Okay, you just need to put them behind you with the poster going, don't do agile, be agile. It's just convince them, go with it, you know. So there you are, you've got that up there. Now, here's the one you might be aiming for, you might want to aim for, okay? Basically, it's even better. Forget the senior developer. You want true commitment, you basically go with the group leader, right? Now, here's what you want to do. You want to make the group leader the Scrum Master, but make them the product owner as well. Because that is a management slam dunk. You now have cornered the market, and what happens here? You have literally Scrum Master, product owner, and it's all management. He's yours, he's going to do what you say, you have everything under control. Job done, no worries. And you could say, look, we have a Scrum Master, we have a product, it's the same. Yeah, we have a Scrum Master, we have a product owner, we have a team, we have a backlog, we're agile. But looking agile. Didn't say anything about being agile. Now, some of them, this goes faster than you think. Now, some of the smackheads are pretty persistent. Okay, they're pretty good. It's nearly admirable. I mean, you watch from a distance and virtually feel small twinges of empathy for them as they battle on against the organization, trying to bring agility through. And there you are, putting hurdles in front of them the whole time as they go along. So here's what you've got to do. If you've got one of these ones who's a real true believer and he's going for it and he just doesn't take no for an answer, okay? You turn to God. Okay? Yes, you turn to God. And not only are you going to turn to God, you're going to put God on the team. You're wondering who God is. I know, right? God is grumpy old developer. Okay? You guys all familiar with grumpy old developer? Grumpy old developer is a lifer. Grumpy old developer has been in the company for 35 years. He probably started in the company as an accountant, and when they brought in COBOL, they said, you're good with numbers, aren't you? You're a programmer. Okay? He lost interest in programming when Turbo Pascal came along, and he thought C++ will never work. This guy stopped. He mentally changed, and he's a superhero in the company, right? I mean, he's got his fingers in so many holes in what's going on. Everyone is shitting themselves that if he pulls his finger out, the whole edifice just goes... It's like implodes. And he knows it. He knows this. Because you can see it in his attitude in every meeting. It's like, dare me. And he's always sitting there with this kind of, yeah. Seen it all before, and then you'll be coming with ideas, and it'll be a flat out, no, that won't work here. And it's like a veto. Okay, it's like a veto, basically, when he says this. Now, what you need to do is you put God on the team. Right? God's on the team now. Everybody's afraid of God. And you call the Scrum Master over, and you go, listen, I've got something for you to do. Look, I don't think he has an agile mindset. I need you to get him an agile mindset, okay? It's important for the team that they all work together. I'd recommend pair programming, mob programming on his stuff. I really think you should give this a go, okay? So off you go and get him an agile mindset. This is super. Talk about keeping them busy. This is a dog with a bone, okay? This is an unending cycle of the Scrum Master, your smackhead. He's just busy all the time from now on. You won't see him again. He has a mission in life. You have given him purpose. And his purpose is not getting in the way of you staying where you are in the company, going up the career ladder. This is a master stroke, okay? So don't forget God, okay? So I'm going to talk about something now. I grew up in Ireland, and I've worked in the last century, okay, born in the last century, which turns out to be the last millennium, actually, when you think about it. And a lot of things were banned in Ireland when I was growing up. You don't want to know, it's a long list. And I was thinking, in the agile communities, basically two things that are banned, that you're banned from talking about. SAFe, which I mentioned already, and Jira. Okay, two things you're not allowed to talk about. Okay, now I'm going to talk to you about the joy of Jira and the fun that you can have with Jira, because you can create a Jira jungle that no Scrum Master is ever coming out of alive again. Okay, this is beautiful. It's a work of art, really, if you look at it. I mean, they love complexity. They keep telling us they love solving complex problems. Wait, you see our Jira. Okay, so what do? Well, first off, have a bunch of projects, right? Don't make it just one project, because it's too easy if there's one project, okay? Now, in those individual projects, please make sure that you have different issue types that may be similar, but they have different names, okay? In each of the projects, okay? So it's a bug here, it's an incident there, it's an error there, it's here we've got a story, no, here we've got a technical story, here we've got an enabler, here we've got, you know, whatever your fantasy tells you, okay? But make sure it's pretty different in each project, okay? And so when you try to put it together, it's a clusterfuck, okay? Now, there's a level above this. We're still on the amateur level, okay? What you do afterwards, each one of those incidents gets a different workflow. Now we're playing, okay? Because put that shit on a Kanban board, doesn't work. Because that state doesn't map with that state, doesn't map with that one, okay? This is what you do. You can create such a jungle with Jira. It is incredible, okay? So you do this first off, and they're going to spend the first 6 months trying to put a board together just to kind of find out what's happening, okay? After that, right, you want them to, I used to say, you go over to walk over here to see what I want to say next. Jesus, this up here, I just need the water. So after this, what you're going to do, though, after you've done this, you put in these workflows, okay? And then ask them to do reporting on it. This is the best bit. Now, you've done all this. Now you ask them to do reporting. So now you want to know incidents per sprint, incidents per quarter, incidents per release, errors per sprint. I want to know story points per developer. Okay, just give me story points per developer. I want to know that we're doubling our velocity. I want to see Jeff Sutherland, twice the work in half the time, 4% increase. Give them goals. I want to see reports showing that that's what we're achieving, okay? The brilliant bit, lads, you don't need to read the reports. You don't need to look at them. You just need to demand them. And as soon as he has a system worked out where he's kind of automated getting the data out of it, change the reports. Change the reports, okay? As soon as he's comfortable with this shit, just change the reports and just keep them busy. Keep them busy. You getting the message? Do not give them time to ferment a rebellion. There should be no change happening. You're trying to keep the status quo. That's what we do as managers, right? So this is what that's what you do. Now, the cheeky ones, they may come along and say to you, you know, it's an impediment. This whole Jira thing, it's a real impediment for us. We're not getting very far. It's easy. So you basically go, yeah, I'll talk to somebody. You go off and you can talk to somebody if you want, won't change anything. And you come back and you just go, look, we needed it for auditing purposes and ISO 9001. And without that, we get no customers. And that's just a killer argument. They can't argue with that, okay? And that's why every developer has to write every 15 minutes onto a ticket somewhere in Jira, which really leads to empowerment, I can tell you. So, it could be the case. It could be the case that some of them will get cheeky, right? And they might come up to you and they might accuse you of not being an agile leader. And personally, it's so hard not to pull out my job description and say, which bit of manager do you not understand? Okay? My job is to manage things here. There is no incentive anywhere in my contract for me to be an agile leader, okay? My job, I'm a manager. We are managers. We are being told what we are to do, okay? We have been given objectives. We have management by objectives. Our incentives are based on this. And you want me to be an agile leader? It's not going to work. Okay? Now, if you want to go to the HR department and get my job description changed and my incentivization and what bonus I get at the end of the year, well, we can talk about it. That generally kills that discussion. Okay? So that's the one you can kind of take off the table at that point. So, it could be, despite the Jira jungle, despite everything you've thrown in their way, they still keep coming sometimes. It's impressive, really, to be honest. Fair play to them. They keep coming. Now, this is where it's a longer-term tactic to deal with them, but here's what you need to do, okay? You basically take a leaf out of God's book, okay? And basically, this time it's not in God we trust, it's going to be in the company culture we trust, okay? So what we're going to do is, and I'm pretty sure that Peter Drucker said this, he said, culture eats smackheads for breakfast, okay? You leave them run against the hurdles for long enough, they will become absorbed by the system. Okay, this is what happens. You just leave it go. Trust your company culture. It will wear them down. Okay? At some point, you'll be sitting in a meeting and you'll see that light go on in their faces like it used to. They'll have an idea, something they could improve, an impediment they could replace, okay? You'll see this go on and you'll see them start to talk and they go, nah, that would never work here. And you have won. You have housebroken and trained your smackhead. He belongs to you. You have won. It's over. He is part of the system. He is no threat anymore. He has been industrialized. He's been made a corporate warrior, whatever way you want to put it. He's part of the system. He's given up, and honestly. So don't get rid of him. You've just spent 2 years breaking him in. You got to keep him. So you got to feed him little tidbits every now and again, you know. Tell him he can go to a meetup about the magic of Kanban, or say, you know what, I think you're doing a great job, and we can stop estimating in days. I think we could try out story points. You got to throw him something that he feels like there's some progress going on, okay? So whatever you do, you know, don't scare them off. That was hard work, getting to them to that point, okay? You want to keep them there. Don't lose them. We're doing well, we're grand. Time-wise, I'm rocking it here at the moment. So there we go. We finally worn down. So we started off with Kanban. We moved on to Scrum. We looked at what it was when they were internal Scrum Masters, when we take, you know, when they put some money out and bring in some external Scrum Masters, when they're really persistent, what we can do to wear them down, make sure they don't get anywhere. Now we get on to the bit about scaling frameworks. Okay? So, SAFe. Anyone familiar with the Scaled Agile Framework? So, what is in a name? I mean, have you ever come across better marketing? I mean, what's this? It's SAFe. What do you associate with SAFe? Safest houses, safety net, safe pair of hands, all these kind of words that are a safe house. There's all these words you associate with SAFe. It is one of the singularly most non-threatening words on the face of the planet. Okay? I mean, they did not come along and call this the Scaled Lean Agile process, because that would have been SLAP. Do you think you'd have said, oh yeah, SLAP sounds good. Oh, let's try out some SLAP. They're not going to do that. And for all you lovely German speakers here, myself included at this stage, what if they'd called it the Scaled Agile Unified Framework? SAUF. Okay? Was tut sie? Now wir saufen. Okay? Actually, having said that, probably that would be good to have a few beers every time you're doing an agile transformation. It's probably not such a bad idea after all. But I mean, this is what they kind of mean. SAFe is literally your job is safe with SAFe. Okay? 9 out of 10 managers prefer SAFe. Okay? It is literally the one that nothing bad is going to happen to you if you do SAFe. No major scars, because we keep the whole management thing. All you need to know as a manager is your department, your thing, make that the train. Forget everything SAFe says about value streams and all that other stuff about, you know, flow and all. Forget that. It's about just keeping your department together and make sure that you're head of that train. That's all you need to remember with SAFe. Now, in my view, SAFe really outdid themselves on the marketing front, particularly in the German-speaking world, because last year, SAFe brought out SAFe 6, okay? And in German, that is SAFe sex, okay? Now, this is brilliant, because basically it sums up SAFe brilliantly, because it's basically an agile prophylactic. You can have all the joy of an agile transformation with no danger of anybody being impregnated with agility, okay? It's not going to happen, okay? So it's absolute classic piece of marketing ploy on behalf of SAFe. Admittedly only for the German-speaking world, but maybe they weren't selling enough trainings. So there we go. I mean, the other thing to say about SAFe, in fairness to it, that it's basically quarterly release planning. I feel very at home with it. I think, you know, you can roll with SAFe. If you get a chance to use SAFe, basically as a manager, sign on the dotted line. It'll be good. Okay, there we go. This is, 15 seconds. So, I'm going to say thank you very much. I hope that was interesting. Apparently, David's going to be talking about the magic of Kanban. While he's signing his books down there, I'll be signing autographs. Okay? Right, thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Connor. I think you have a lot of fans tonight here. I want just one question. What gave you the inspiration for this talk?
Two things, I think. I mean, if you listen to this, I've seen all this, and I've suffered from this at various times. So it was my way of dealing with it. And the other thing was I was going to do a really boring talk about agile anti-patterns, and one of the things that I've tried to work on over the last while is understanding management. When I started off, I literally believed management was evil. Okay, 15 years ago, whatever, I would have said management was evil. They were the root of all evil. If they changed, everything would be fine. And really, the change has been trying to appreciate they're working under their own set of circumstances. We need to meet in the middle somewhere. So I just thought it'd be fun to. Apparently, this is a paradoxical intervention or something like that. I was just having fun because I thought it'd be funnier to do it like this than to just say, well, here's an example of managers doing everything wrong. So thank you for playing along as managers tonight. You were brilliant middle managers.
Thank you. Thank you, Robert. At the same time, you started thinking about managers 15 years ago. 15 years ago, I was a CIO in a ski manufacturing company. So I worked at a ski company called Blizzard in Mittersill. And we were going through very tough times at the time. And we started thinking about changing the way we do production. And we came to the point where we started thinking about introducing lean management and lean production principles. And as we were doing this, I got connected to all these things like pool systems and organizing small little self-organized teams and all these things. And I was thinking, well, could I do the same thing in the IT department? And I started looking around, and coincidentally, I found a book. It was this book. This book was written by a guy named David Anderson. And as I read it under the apple tree in my garden at Easter Sunday, it literally changed the way I was looking at my teams. And we started introducing the principles in this book within my IT department. And this was in the beginning of 2011, so it's 13 years ago. And I think we had one of the first Kanban implementations in IT, and also connected to a production area within Austria. Fast forward, a few years later, 2 years later, I got a message, direct message over Twitter. There was a time where you could still have decent conversations on Twitter, and there were not all the nerds and all the psychos contact you there. So I got a direct message from David Anderson, and he said, well, and he wrote, I heard what you're doing there in Mittersill. Can I come and take a look? And I said, sure, why not? And he said, well, he's in Meyerhofen in Zillertal, and it's just over the mountain. And can we meet up? And we did. And David came to us, to the factory in Mittersill, and this was the picture we took there. It was the end of June 2013. And he came to us with Dragos Dimitriou. Dragos plays a key role also in the book. He was David's partner in India and doing the Kanban implementation there as they were working for Microsoft. So David and Dragos came to me. And we had a nice talk, and since then I've been connected to David. And he literally, that book and the thinking behind it changed my professional life. Fast forward again, 2 months ago, David wrote me via WhatsApp, and he said, can we do an event for the presentation of his new book? And I said, well, why not? So this is the reason why you're all here tonight. And I'm very happy and also very, very grateful that we have David Anderson here tonight on stage. Ladies and gentlemen, David Anderson.
Servus, guten Abend. Danke sehr fürs Kommen. What Eric didn't tell you is he invited me to ride my bike over the Gerlach Pass. Now, it was, 13 years ago. I was a little fitter then. But I thought about it and I thought, okay, I can get up there. It's downhill the rest of the way. But I can't come back on the same day. So I didn't want to commit to going to visit because it was too long of a bike ride. Right. So in the end, I guess we rented a car from a little petrol station in Marhofen. And Dragos and I drove over, visited Eric and his team. And without doubt, what followed from that Eric won the Austrian CIO of the Year award. And I think the committee that decided the award, they gave it to you for the novelty, the innovation. They wanted to signal to the sort of wider Austrian IT world that you could think differently, that you could dare to think differently, do something different. And I think 2 years later, the 2015 winner also had a big Kanban implementation and had been inspired by your earlier work. So that work at Blizzard, like an important brand from an Austrian perspective, but it's not a huge company. But still, that was very important work that really moved the Kanban world forward and moved the Austrian IT world forward. And that's how we got going with this. Now let's see if I can work this clicker. Okay, so Enterprise-Agilität, so Unternehmensagilität ohne Overhead. Why? Well, I've been doing this a long time. I got involved with what was called the lightweight methods movement in 1997. So I was in this Agile thing since they started calling it Agile, 2001, November. Sometime in 2002, I remember posting onto an online forum, an Agile community online forum, and my question was really simple. Is this just a club? Is this just a club that you want to be a member of? Or are you here to make a difference in the world? Because if it's just a club, I don't want to be a member. So at that time, I was writing my first book. It's called Agile Management for Software Engineering. Apparently, you're not allowed to be a manager and be agile. But I learned something very important. So there's two things. First of all, that book was highly influential because it was the first book that introduced the concept of flow into software, IT work, any sort of technology work. And it influenced a lot of really famous people who made a big difference in my career. Barry Boehm was one of them, who invited me to come present the ideas at the University of Southern California's research review. Well, some guys in the audience there used to work at Rational, and they were incredibly impressed with what I had to say. And a week or two later, by coincidence, they got a call from an old friend at Microsoft saying, hey, we need to hire a process guy who could do something with process in what's now called Azure DevOps, but back then it was called something completely different. And I got recommended for that, and that made a huge difference to my career. Now, until 2007, or the end of 2007, I had a real job. And the last real job, I was Senior Director for Software Engineering at Bill Gates' company called Corbis. So I have met Bill on the 7th of December 2007, in fact. Only the once, mind you. My boss kept me away from him. Bill doesn't care about process. His view is, I've got 25,000 highly intelligent geeks working in this campus. They can work this shit out. Sadly, not so much. And you get Bill excited about architecture, not about process. So why the magic of Kanban? Well, tonight I can't talk about everything. I'm going to talk about chapter 5 in the new book. And I just noticed the translation, and I checked with Wolfgang. Umwege. Right? Umwege für den Sieg. Right? Apparently that's how you translate obliquity, which is the title in English. The idea that you achieve things through an oblique approach. Now, how many of you here are parents? Parents. Can you command your child to pass their examinations? No, you can't. In fact, when they're very little, you can sort of just tell them what to do, but they'll still resist. And as they get older, well, they just don't pay any attention. And then you watch them make all the same mistakes that you made as a child, or very similar versions of it. And particularly my younger daughter, I've noticed, is the one who, she's got this sort of fire in her belly like her dad, and that gets her into trouble from time to time. Hopefully no one knocks it out of her until she's about 45. So Robert's been in my class, he told me about 10 years ago. So part of when I'm teaching classes, I say, look, this is like parenting. You just can't tell your kids what to do. And even if you try to share it from, look, I've been there. I was a kid just like you. They're like, no, you weren't. And I've made the mistake that you're about to make. And therefore, I think you shouldn't do it. Well, I'm going to do it anyway. And the threshold for intervening as a parent is called, can they kill themselves? Right? When they're little kids, that threshold's pretty low, so you intervene a lot. But if they grow up as a gymnast and they like skiing, that's a bad combination. And then they get old enough to start driving the car to the ski slopes. So that's at the point where you think, I do not want to watch any longer. As a parent, I just pray that they come home. Right, so obliquity is the idea that you influence things to happen that produce good outcomes, like your children grow up to be functional human beings who can get a job and, pay their own bills and look after themselves, right? Success as a parent is they don't need you anymore. And success as a manager is also that they don't need you anymore. I have a whole separate talk, and it's also, I think, chapter 16 in the book, about scaling, where the key is you have to work yourself out of a job, just like you have to do as a parent. So, obliquity is getting things done by indirect means. And when people see Kanban, they see all this obvious stuff. Boards, tickets, columns. Maybe they see work in progress limits, and they see all these sort of direct actions you can take. What they don't see are all these hidden side effects, some of which I've written about in the book, and some I'm going to talk about tonight from chapter 5, the obliquity chapter. Now, behind all of this, there is a core formula, which I teach in my coaching classes, that you drive evolutionary change or any sort of adaptive leadership by introducing some stress in the environment. If people are too comfortable, nothing changes. Then there needs to be a feedback mechanism. And we see a lot of companies who don't understand what that means, and a lot of companies who spend all the time just running an open loop. They don't know how to close the loop and compare, did what actually happened even remotely resemble what we hoped would happen? And if what actually happened is different, should we do something about it? And that's the third thing, the act of leadership. And to get people to show leadership, they need to be held accountable. Now, it turns out this word accountability is very troublesome. It doesn't translate into pretty much any other language. Right? How did you translate it for the German book? Wolfgang's disappeared. So, with my Spanish colleagues at our office in Bilbao, they say, look, David, you know, if we translate accountability into Spanish, it's responsibility. And it's the same in Portuguese, it's the same in Russian. So I came up with a very simple way of explaining this. Responsibility is to be responsible for doing something. Accountability is to be responsible for the outcome. And you cannot delegate accountability. Right? So the manager of the football team, to get back to your self-organizing analogy, the manager is the one who is accountable for the results. The players, he's delegated to the players. Go out and play the game, kick the ball around. The objective is to put the ball in the opponent's goal. And if you do that more than they do it to us, we win, and that's good for me. So the manager is accountable, and if after the game the team's played badly and they've lost, the manager says, well, it's not my fault, they played like shit. That's called abdication. That's not leadership. All right. This is the magic formula. Everything gets driven off this. Now, stressors can be a variety of different things. And this idea of what is a stressor, well, Nassim Taleb, who's written a number of books, probably most famous for The Black Swan, the book's about risk management. And the concept of anti-fragile, this probably comes from the book Anti-Fragile. When an anti-fragile entity is under stress, it's provoked to mutate, improve, or change. So you get evolutionary change when something is uncomfortable. Now, it could be different levels of uncomfortable. You might have introduced grey squirrels from North America into the United Kingdom, and the red squirrels are all like, ooh, don't like the accent, and it's kind of big. Stressing them out. And change happens. Or it might be an asteroid hits your planet, and suddenly it's out of fashion to be a dinosaur. Few of them figured out how to fly. They're still around. But apart from that, they're all gone. Did that jump 2 slides? No. Okay, so I'm going to talk primarily about the operations review, which is the grandmother of all retrospectives. And chapter 5 is about operations review, but it's primarily about not so much how to do it. I wrote about that in chapter 14 of the book that Eric showed you. It's more about all these subtle side effects that happen as a consequence. Now, first of all, what is an operations review? Well, my boss, when I worked at a telco called Sprint, he was a former Canadian Air Force pilot and Australian Secret Service person. And he was inspired by something in NATO called a readiness review. So all NATO military officers are trained in this and have to attend them. I know that at least some of you here may have been in the services Wolfgang was, German Army. So readiness reviews are all about if we, for example, get attacked by some enemy on the east, are we actually capable of doing anything about it? And understanding just how ready we are. Also, that's why all sorts of Russian planes fly over the North Sea recently. What they're doing is testing how fast the RAF can fly a jet up there and tell them to get lost. They're running the stopwatch on that. How ready are these guys? So what actually happened And this is a private event, so I can talk about it because my boss, who lives in Zug, which is not far away from here, nowadays he lives in Zug, he doesn't like me telling this story. In 2001, he had charge of this new business unit inside Sprint, the .com business unit. He had a budget of about $75 million. And that was supposed to last him from January through until December. But round about the end of October, the 75 million was already gone. And he had to go back to the executive committee of the company with his cap and say, could you pour another 10 million or so in here, just to tide us over till the end of the year? Well, what happened, John? You ran out of money. Well, you know, it's a new business unit and not everything's under control. Why would we give you another 10 million if you're going to squander it? So he had to agree to put in certain controls so that they would trust him with the extra 10 million. And the introduction of operations review was part of that, in order to prove that he was trustworthy with the money and they should give him even more next year. Now, it made a tremendous difference, such that I copied it when I went to Corbis, at the time when I was working with Bill Gates. And it's that Corbis experience that's documented in the book. Now, operations review is designed to work at scale from about 150 people to 900 people. And you don't put all of them in the meeting. But at 150 people, we got pretty close to having all of them in the meeting. But if your business unit's 450 people, you don't put 450 people in the meeting. Maybe 100 or so. Anyone at team lead level and above. Some upstream and downstream people. It's documented in the book. The key point is this is an somewhat enterprise scale, certainly a business unit scale feedback mechanism. So that if your complaint is, we have too many dependencies and they cause lots of delays, those guys are in the room. Right? You don't have to point at them, you put it on the slide, and everyone else turns their head and looks at them. How does that make them feel? And do you think they'll do something about it before the next time? So it turns out presenting the results from any one, let's call it department or workflow, to all of your peers and some bosses and some upstream and downstream people, customers and the like, that's a strong stressor. So in late September 2006, the management team who reported to me, I told them, the second Friday of December, we are holding our first operations review. I told them what it was. I explained it to them. Very good. Team meeting over, they go away. Next morning, knock on the door, someone comes in. David, this meeting that you're going to do in December, you want me to present? I said, yes, you're a department manager. Okay. What do you want me to talk about? I said, well, nothing terribly exciting, just what your department does, who your customers are, what they ask you for, how many of the things you've done, and how satisfied the customers are. Pretty basic stuff. Okay. They went away. Another one later in the morning, same question, same answer. A couple of days go by, knock on the door. David, this meeting you want me to present at, and you want me to talk about what my department does. And what exactly did you mean by that? So a little bit of talking. I say, imagine that you're operating a Starbucks. Who are your customers? What do they ask you for? What do they come into Starbucks for? Oh, cups of coffee. Ah, so you're in the cup of coffee business. How many of those did you do this month? Was that up or down on last month? How satisfied are the customers? How many cups of coffee got trashed and you had to make another one? Okay, very good. They go away. Another few days go by, back in my office. So, if I understand this correctly, this meeting's in the beginning of December, and we're presenting the November numbers. Yes, that's correct. Well, if we're going to have numbers for November, we need to have some sort of tracking system to collect the data. I said, no, not necessarily. You could do it yourself manually. Now, I have had to do this early in my career, right? 1992. When I was given charge of the product company I worked for's help desk as a punishment from the CTO, who was unhappy that a product development manager had been hired to actually get shit done, because all he liked to do was play with his little electronic soldering iron and stuff. And I went to talk to the help desk guys, right? And the help desk guys, in Britain, there was something called the Youth Opportunity Program. This was for kids who weren't that bright at school and weren't ready to go to university. So the idea was that the government would pay basically half of the minimum wage of these workers to join on some sort of apprenticeship. But it got a bad reputation quickly because Youth Opportunity Program is YOP. So anyone on the YOP program was a yopper. Right, so the government renamed it to the Youth Training Scheme, YTS. No one could pronounce that. Right, so we had two of these guys. One of them had a part-time job as a DJ, and the other one worked part-time collecting the trolleys at the supermarket in the car park and bringing them back into the supermarket. But they loved our product. And so I went to talk to them, and I said, you know, what happens when the phone rings? Well, we answer the phone, we chat up the customer for a while, we figure out what product they've got, what problem it is, and we help them solve it. How many phone calls did you guys get last week? Oh, a lot. So the problem was that we'd gone from one YTS guy to two YTS guys. And our CEO had a little graph, 1, 2, and his fear was it was going to do this. So I collected all the data manually for the first 2 months. After that first meeting, I went back to my office. I printed out a form. Well, I typed it up on Word, and I printed it out, took it to the photocopier, because we couldn't afford to print too many copies, right? Took it to the photocopier, photocopied a stack of forms, went back to the two guys, and I said, every time someone answers the phone while you're chatting them up, fill this form. And every week I collected them, last thing on Friday night, and I stayed late in the office, and I collected all the data manually. Now, you could do it that way, or you could have a tracking system, and you know what? We work for Bill Gates. So that tracking system is going to be Team Foundation Server. And they said, okay, but look, if we need the data for November, we need it installed and running before the end of October. Yeah, that would be right. But that's only 4 weeks from now. Yes. At no time did I ever issue a directive that we must install Team Foundation Server and use it for tracking. At no time did I ask any of my staff that they need to create work item types and record a ticket for every request. I didn't ask any of that. I asked them to come to operations review and report what their department does. Right. Magic happened, and Team Foundation Server was installed and running by the end of October. Now, we had one manager who worked for me, and he was a stand-up comedian. Seriously. Another manager I worked with, he was an actor, an unemployed actor, who had previously worked as a waiter at Bill Gates' house at parties. Right. But the stand-up comedian was actually the head of the analyst department, and he was the Uber analyst. The reason I am the manager is because I am the best analyst in the whole company. So much so that he had a policy in place that every piece of analysis done in his department had to go to him for personal review, right? So that he could check that it was up to his standards. Now, analysis is an art form. You can't possibly measure it. So we won't bother with Team Foundation Server. And he had a simple strategy. He was a fairly good amateur stand-up comedian. You know, he'd been in this community for years. He'd gone to training on it. He was regularly on a stage doing improv comedy with some other people. So his idea was he'd come to operations review and he would just improv for his 8 minutes. Just, you know, tell a few jokes, point at a few pictures, and nobody would actually notice that he didn't have any data or any clue how to manage his department. So we have 2 hours, and there are 8 other department managers, all with 8 minutes each. There was some other stuff in the agenda. And maybe he's going 5th. So we got 8 minutes of, here are my data, my PowerPoint slides taken from Team Foundation Server, and the charts and the graphs, and oh, there's a big blip on this one. I have an explanation for that. And we get 1, 2, 3, 4, then we get stand-up comedian. Well, the next week he's in my office, and he's one-on-one meeting. He said, you know, I think I've figured out how we can track analysis in the TFS. The following month, he's there with all his charts and graphs and his explanations of how things are going. No more stand-up comedy. At no time did I ever tell him he had to present those slides. All right, so the slides are just here for later, right? But the ability to do this is the litmus test for a manager. What business are you in? Who are your customers? What do they ask you for? How long does it take you to get it done? At what quality level? With how many things? And is that rising or declining? Does it change seasonally, etc., etc.? Right. So, what business are you in? And taking responsibility and the accountability for that. Now, I said I learned something from my first book, the Agile Management book. I learned 2 things. The first one was I got introduced to a bunch of important, influential people in the IT industry who made a difference in my career. The second one was nobody cares about productivity. You know that velocity chart? No one cares. No one cares if that's rising. I wrote an entire book about how to improve the productivity of software engineers. Nobody cared. What people care about is how long does it take? Will it be on time? Is it of good quality? They care about predictability. The mass market cares about predictability. They don't care about productivity. Now, if productivity means we can fire half of you guys, now we care about it. Right? But the actual number rising, no. But if the productivity rises means that something that used to take 5 months only takes 11 days, that's Dragos Dimitriou's story. Now, just to focus on Dragos for a moment, right? So, my phone, I typed a message on an internal forum in Microsoft. And my phone rang a few minutes later, and the guy said, hi, you know, I'm Dragos from IT, and I saw your message on the forum, and you know, it's really funny because I'm reading a book by a guy called David Anderson. And I said, yes, I am David Anderson. He said, I know, it's so funny, what a coincidence. I'm reading a book by a guy called David Anderson. In Microsoft's pay scale, Dragos was a level 61. Level 59 is a university graduate. Level 65 is a department manager. And level 69 is the first vice president level. He's 2 levels above university graduate. And he's a program manager in IT, in charge of the maintenance for a bunch of systems like the payroll system, the HR records keeping system, physical security systems, and 1 or 2 others. Dragos said, I have volunteered to run this department with the worst customer service record in all of IT. Nobody wants this job. Now, he's an unusual character. He's a former Romanian Olympic athlete. He's also been a stuntman in the movies. He owned a fitness center in Bucharest. And when he first arrived in the US, because his wife was really a fancy doctor and he followed her there, he got a job as a cleaner in a hospital for mentally ill patients. 2 years later, he was the manager. Then his wife moved to the middle of the US, and he followed her again, and he got a job as a project manager at Great Plains Software. Microsoft bought Great Plains. Dragos was getting divorced, and suddenly he's in the IT department in Seattle, volunteering to be the idiot who takes over the department that no one loves. So we met, and I helped him fix it. In fact, the discussion, that conversation we had, became the foundation for what is now our Kanban system design training class that we still offer pretty much every day all over the world. And what happened to Dragos? Well, he went from 5.5 months average delivery time to 11 days. He went from 0% on time to 98% on time, and it took him 15 months to get there. He didn't spend any money, and he didn't add any people. When his general manager, Dale Christian, left Microsoft to go and work at Avanade as the CIO, he brought Dragos with him to be the head of IT services for the entire world, reporting directly to the CIO. It's like 5 levels of promotion in a single step. Dale eventually went to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation as the CIO. And Dragos has had kind of an interesting career going around. Dragos goes to a job interview and he's like, so what do you need to fix? You know, if you're not doing like a transition or something, if you're not fixing a problem, I don't need to be here. Okay. So the key thing is we need to get managers to recognize that they're in charge of a system, and that system is defined by a set of policies, a set of rules, and people work in that system and they're supposed to follow the rules. If the system is, the outcomes are not what you expect, it's the system that's broken and they need to be changed. And actually sometimes that can be really easy, especially if you're the manager and you have the authority to change the policies. So we need to get the managers thinking differently, and it turns out that operations reviews are a very good way of doing that because they have to stand up in front of everyone and they can't go around saying, you know, things were shit last month because Eric's really not very good at his job. Right? That's not going to work. They need to be able to get up there and explain, this is what we do, and the reason that things are stuck is because we have a dependency on this other group and they're not servicing us. And they have the data, right? So in God we trust, everyone else brings data, right? W. Edwards Deming, right? So the bootstrapping of the operations review, it got managers focused on thinking in systems, understanding the business they're in, and implementing the instrumentation and getting the data and reporting that they would need. In fact, that got so popular, we had to dedicate one of our DBAs just to creating internal reports for the management team. So, obliquity about propagating a desired behavior. And all sorts of interesting examples that maybe some appear elsewhere in the book. At one point, we drew a trash can onto the Kanban board. The first Kanban board at Corbis, we drew a trash can on it. And if something went on the board, if it was committed work, and it didn't make it to the end, it went in the trash can. Then I started to think, well, we should give this trash can a bit of visibility, amplify it a bit. So I started to produce, just from the tracking system, from Team Foundation Server, a little report that was called the Waste Report. And we took the Waste Report to the weekly replenishment meeting where we pull the new tickets into the Kanban system. And the customers, 6 of them, all vice presidents, are at that meeting. And we would present the Waste Report. So imagine there's a few tickets that went on there from marketing into the trash can. Well, all these other vice presidents are looking at he wasn't the CMO, he was a level below that. But they're all looking at him saying, so what is it with you marketing guys? Why are you wasting our capacity? No one's complaining about the IT group. They're looking at the other guy saying, why did you ask for something that you didn't really want? And what that did is it put an intense focus on the upstream in the company. Another vice president that I was closer to, he went back to his department after that day and he said, look, you can't send me into that meeting to ask for something unless you're absolutely sure you want it. And you're absolutely sure that we're ready for it. That resulted in policy change to tighten up the definition of ready and an entire initiative across 6 business units to clean up their backlogs. Nobody ever asked them. All we did is put a trash can on the Kanban board and then report the trash on a weekly basis. Now, we always led the ops review with financial information. That was my boss's idea at Sprint. You have to communicate to people, we're running a business here. So you start with the financial info, and how much you can share depends a lot on the business. Corbis, a privately held company owned by Bill. That was easy. Sprint's a publicly listed stock market company. What we can actually share with people without making them insiders. For the stock trading, that's a different matter, right? But to communicate, this is a business, it's about the value. So one of the things we would do, after the initial financial report, we had our business intelligence director who would be data mining some things, and he would present. So what he'd typically do is he'd look at something we released to production 3 months earlier, and then he'd go take a look at what business results it was producing, and then just present them. Now, there had been a case where, in much more peaceful times, the business side had made an argument that advertising agencies in Kiev were desperate to buy our stock photography images if only they were able to purchase them using Polish zloty. Now, this was a non-trivial thing because it was a country catalogue with a different currency, and it meant we had to re-architect the underlying thing. It wasn't huge, but it was an effort. And apparently, there was such a huge demand from these Kiev-based advertising agencies that this had a genuine business case. Well, after 3 months, it had generated about $15,000 or something. And the question was, well, how much effort had this taken? Right, so that got flushed out at operations review, and then on Monday morning at the replenishment meeting, they're all standing staring at the marketing guy again with, so exactly where did that business intelligence come from that there was so much demand in Ukraine? Again, much more focus on, are we choosing the right thing? And nobody ever told them they had to fix that. Nor did we give them any training in it, although that can help. Especially if they're like, okay, we'd love to fix this, but we really don't have a clue how. Well, maybe we can help with that. At least I could help now. Back then, maybe not so much. Well, I'm pointing at the screen because I think it's a remote, Right. So, also the focus on the business just gets people thinking outside of the environment they live in. We started inviting an executive level guest from another part of the company. We went to them and said, hey, would you like 15 minutes at our all hands meeting to describe what you guys do and how you rely on us? And they're like, yes, and bite our hand off for that opportunity. And then my colleague, who is smarter than I am, said, why don't we get them to sponsor it? So we would have for example, this month's operations review sponsored by Business Strategy, and they'd pay for all the food and drinks. Didn't even come out of my budget anymore. Right. Now, one of the keys was that it changed the culture so that people developed a respect for managers. The third month we did operations review at Corbis, there had been some bad shit had gone down the previous month. About 3 months earlier, the CFO had persuaded Bill to buy a company called Australia Picture Library, or APL. And a single ticket arrived that said, please integrate all APL employees into Corbis systems and switch off APL IT systems by the end of January. Thank you very much. I described it as a black hole because it went onto the Kanban board and its force of gravity was so much that it sucked in everybody. We had about 150 people working on this one ticket. Prior to the APL ticket, our average delivery time for a ticket in IT was 30 days, more or less. And afterwards, it was 55 days, and it took 5 months to recover that number back. One ticket. So that all got discussed at operations review. And we used to hold the ops review across the street in a tower block. There was a business club on the top floor that higher level managers than me were members of. And some of my staff had crushed in the elevators, like 15 of them, with me going down because, you know, 150 people to get down, you have to queue up for the elevator. Right? So we're in the elevator, and one of the IT guys, and he said, David, I'm really amazed we're going to discuss bad stuff at these meetings. And I said, yeah, you know, it's not always going to go well. The whole point is if something bad happens, we do something about it. Now, the last thing on the agenda was the list we'd made of things we should do gets assigned to managers around the room, some of them quite high-ranking vice presidents, in front of everyone. And the first agenda item at the beginning, at next meeting, is to go down that list and go around the same room with the same managers asking, you know, can you give us an update on what's happened since last month? Now, what this did is it communicated to the staff that the leadership were there to serve them and help them do a better job, and that managers would take action that would make a difference in their world. And that had the impact of building trust going both ways. And I'm not sure where that is in the slides, but we'll get there. Right, that trust goes both ways. That the staff could see for the first time the value that the leadership were adding in their world. And at the same time, the leadership who were present at the ops review could understand how the system worked, and that system was actually maybe a lot more complex than they envisaged. It wasn't just a simple, we send a ticket to IT, magic happens here, and an upgrade to our system pops out. So there was much greater empathy all round. Now, I knew that I'd really made a difference when one day there's a knock on my door, door's open, and it's a vice president from another business unit. And I knew from some back channel gossip in the company that he was under pressure because it was kind of chaos over there. It was part of the business, not the IT side. And he said, David, you might have heard, but I'm under a bit of pressure and there's a bit of chaos in my world. And this thing you do with the meeting, the second Friday, the meeting in the tower across the street, the second Friday of every month. Can you teach me how to do that? Because I think that's going to make a difference. And a little bit later, there was a change in the chief executive. And the guy who became the CEO had been one of the other C-level guys in charge of some sort of peripheral business unit. I've forgotten what it was called. But Gary Schenk, his name was. And I got called to Gary's office, and he said, look, when I first joined this company, everyone at the C-level hated everyone else. And it was true, right, that the senior VP for sales would not share the stage with the CMO at the company meeting. That's just an indication of the dysfunction there was at the executive committee level. And he said, but now they're all getting along. And whatever you guys are doing in IT, it's got something to do with it. You need to explain to me. Okay, so what happens when you introduce a WIP limit? You've put a constraint. Constraints are stressing. We don't like constraints. We like to have lots of options and plenty of choice. And constrain something. Now you need to make some hard decisions. There's a WIP limit. What are you going to work on now? What waits until later? And what are we not going to do at all? So it turned out that the VPs attending our replenishment meetings were beginning to work this out, that, okay, there's a capacity, and I only get to put something up for election to get voted and chosen every so often. Well, they would start inviting each other for lunch on Fridays. And at lunch, they'd make a deal. So I know that you guys need this ticket selected at the Monday meeting. And I've got 2 more that's queued up, but they're not so urgent. I'll vote for you on Monday if you'll vote for mine 2 weeks later. Changed the culture of the whole company. Because when the C-level guys start collaborating with each other, magic happens in their departments. They see their bosses getting along, and they start to get along. And Gary, who was one of the C-levels, but he was kind of on the side, a peripheral business unit, that did licensing of... We controlled the rights for Albert Einstein's image, for example, on behalf of his family. So anytime someone wanted to use Einstein, say, in an advert, they had to come to us and ask permission. Gary ran that department. So he had called me into his office to find out what the hell I had done to change the company culture. The answer is a WIP limit and a replenishment meeting that involved the actual customers. Right, so getting back to the beginning, right, Unternehmensagilität ohne Overhead. No product owners, no scrum masters. You put the customers in the replenishment meeting with the delivery people. One of those delivery people takes responsibility and is accountable for the flow of the work to ensure it's delivered. And then you invite all those people to the monthly retrospective called Operations Review. And magic happens. Real large-scale enterprise agility happens. And you didn't spend any money. From the very beginning, we've been doing this. Dragos didn't spend any money. That was small-scale, Microsoft's sustaining engineering group in their cross-IT business unit. But he didn't spend any money. And he dropped the delivery times by 90% on average, improved the predictability from 0 to 98%. Oh, and they trebled the productivity that nobody cares about. And the reason we don't use that statistic is no one cares about it. We trebled the productivity of a group in IT. Now, they were an outsourced group in India, so we were actually paying extra dollars for them by the hour. So in that sense, it would have been a saving, or a saving in reverse. Now, some of the things that we've seen since then, a bank called CMB, China Merchant Bank in Shenzhen, they ran a side-by-side comparison in 2016 of a Scrum initiative and a Kanban initiative. At the point when they stopped actually measuring, they were about 2,500 people using Kanban. Eventually, they got to about 5,000. There's a Kanban coach in Shenzhen called Adam Wu who has done 6 more than 5,000 people transitions. One of them was 100,000 people, Huawei. Well, at CMB, they did this measurement. They said, we need one agile coach, they were called Scrum Masters, for every 12 people, and if we take them away, the whole thing just falls apart, and we have to put them back. So they'd increased their fixed costs by 8%, and they'd got to a few hundred people doing Scrum, one agile coach, the enforcer, for every 12 people. Meanwhile, their Kanban initiative was Adam Wu and one of his colleagues, 240 billable days. They got to about 5,000 people. So for the cost of adding about one extra member of staff in a 5,000-person organization, they made a huge difference. Numbers that are pretty comparable with Dragos in terms of dropping lead times and improving predictability. We know this stuff works. We know how to do it. We know how to do it at the scale of 90,000 people, but not in a physical. You guys are mostly retail, right? We don't do physical. But we certainly know how to do this. And it's repeatable, and I've been doing it now for getting on for 20 plus years. Right, so the previous slide just said that actually writing the rules down works really well. So there have been stories where people want transparency. Let's put a Kanban board on the wall. Hey, we are the PMO. Let's have a portfolio Kanban board. Brilliant. There are multiple stories that we've heard over the years. In one case, it was just north of Los Angeles, and I'm forgetting the name of the town momentarily. California company. VP of the PMO came in early one morning, about 8 o'clock, ripped the Kanban board off the wall, trashed it. Why would the VP of the PMO not want a Kanban board on the wall? Is that better? Why would the VP not want the Kanban board on the wall? Because it's got bad news on it. And the VP thinks it's his job to control all the news, to control the information. Well, so sometimes the visibility thing doesn't always work. You have to start somewhere else. It turns out that the place that's least offensive to people is to write the rules down. Let's make all the policies for how things work around here explicit. Let's write these rules down. And as soon as you do that, they become discussable. And when something's not working, people can point at the policy and say, I think this policy's to blame. And it's no longer me versus Robert discussion, it's Robert and I versus the policy. That completely changes the culture. So this just gives you a flavor of why it's going to take me 4 books to replace the previous 1 book. There are a lot of stories to be told about all these hidden, unexpected, counterintuitive side effects, this oblique approach. And the operations review is just one example, really, but it's something that's shown to drive a significant number of these oblique changes. And the slides are things that you can review later. It's just a summary. The cultural impact, the fact that a VP from another business unit, no one's told them. Go look at what Anderson's doing over there and copy it. No one's told them that. Company culture has changed. Now, to be honest though, this stuff is easily undone. Right? So I'll wrap things up with this word of caution. it requires people to value the benefits, to value the feedback mechanism, to value the changes that are happening in the organization, and to value the idea that magic can happen even if you weren't in control. And as parents, we want that magic to happen. We want our children to grow up and be functioning, self-supporting adults. And we didn't control it. We just set the environment and enabled it. But for some reason, when those same parents get in their car, drive to the office, now they want to be in control of everything. And they feel that if they're not in control, they won't get the credit for it. Now, it just takes one manager who wants everything to be under their control and to be taking the credit for everything. And suddenly, operations review, oh, that's a very big meeting. That's very expensive to hold that meeting. I think maybe we shouldn't do it so often. Let's reduce it to once every 3 months. So you get all these people at the meeting once every 3 months. No one can remember what the hell happened 3 months ago. And there's too much data, and it's overwhelming, and the quality of the decision-making deteriorates. 9 months later, you know, these expensive meetings don't produce any positive benefits, so we should just stop them altogether. And then I start getting invited out to lunch by people who are still at the company. And they want to discuss the fact that the company went from this high maturity engine that was working almost perfectly and has deteriorated back to the bad old days that everyone hated. All it took was one manager to decide that he did not value what was happening, and that instead he valued the idea that he had to take the credit for everything. He had to be seen as the hero. He had to be in control, making all the decisions. And it's like anything else that's really beautiful in the world, anything that has very low entropy. If you don't keep pumping energy into it, it deteriorates really fast. So fundamentally, making all of this work is about really good quality leadership. And sadly, it took me way too long to figure that out. And it's only relatively recently that we introduced a leadership curriculum in our training programs so that we can help people be the quality of leader we need them to be to enable everything else. So we have food and drink. There's books to be signed. Eric's going to be back on the stage. There's some questions maybe. And
Stay here. Thank you, David. Thank you for, I think it was a very inspiring talk. David mentioned the book a few times, and the reason why we're here is also that there's a presentation of the German version of the book. And as we discussed this a few weeks ago to do this, I thought, well, let's call the translator of the book, because this is a guy I've known also for a very long time. He's a very seasoned and experienced Kanban trainer. He works in Germany. He came all the way from Hanover last night. Let's welcome the translator of the book, Wolfgang Wiedenroth. Wolfgang, thank you for being here. You already spent some hours with some of the people of our teams here. Yes. This afternoon. You had a very vivid and very, very good discussion, I heard, about a lot of things, especially about tooling and Jira. No. Yes. David.
Luckily, no.
Sorry?
Luckily, no.
Luckily, no. Wolfgang, what was the biggest challenge in translating the book?
I think it's, with every translation, it's words like obliquity.
Obliquity.
Yeah, because like, if you look it up in a dictionary, it's just like in German it would be Schrägheit, and it wouldn't fit, right? So it's like getting to know the details, and it really helps to know the author. I mean, I know David now for over 10 years, and I think this is like the most difficult part of it. Something like the title, for example. In English, it's Discover Kanban. In German, we just call it Kanban because, so what does David mean with Discover Kanban, right? Is it like you discovered Kanban or he discovered Kanban, or is it both? And actually it's both, but you just know that if you ask David, right? So before that, you just have to, guess, and that could go wrong.
The English title works both ways, and it focuses on this thing that it's an emergent thing, that we're discovering it and everything it can do for us. And that was super difficult to translate into German.
Last week I sent out an email to some of my teams, and I asked them, so what are the questions you could have tonight to David and Wolfgang? So thank you for all the colleagues that wrote some of the questions. Of course, maybe there are some questions in the audience, but let's start with this one first. How does Kanban facilitate continuous improvement, and could you provide an example of a significant transformation you've witnessed?
I think I already did that in the presentation. Yeah. Operations review would be one of the ways it facilitates evolutionary change, and I think I gave several examples. But,
yeah, and for me it would be the replenishment David also mentioned, and I think I have like the best experience in introducing replenishments, like having the customer, or even like just doing it with the team so they get used to it, and then afterwards like inviting the customer and having them like decide what they actually want to do. Like, I think it's the best change you can witness.
What is the best way to avoid falling back into those old patterns we came from? I mean, you can call Connor, right?
Yeah.
I think we always hate questions about best, but ultimately the thing I highlighted right at the end, it comes down to the leadership. Things regress really quickly when leaders don't value what's happening. If they feel they need to be in control, or they need to take the credit, that their self-image is, I'm the hero manager and I need to be making everything happen. Or they're just fearful of this empowered, enabled culture. So if they're weak leaders, things will regress very quickly. So the quality of leadership, I think, is the best way, and therefore you need some sort of leadership development program. That needs to be a proactive thing to maintain the strength.
Yeah, to add to this, so if we like it or not, the culture is depending on the leadership, right? So if like David was talking about like being a parent. So my wife always says like kids are mirroring the parents, and if you like it or not, like they will do what you do. So if the leadership doesn't do the right thing, the team will do the wrong thing too. So I think leadership is key here. Yeah.
It's funny how they do that even if they never actually saw you doing it 30 years earlier.
Feels familiar, right?
Yeah. There's a WhatsApp group for that in school, so they talk about the parents and their behavior on the teenagers. So are there any questions from the audience? All the way back there.
So thank you so much. Just a quick story. 6 years ago, I tried to sell Eric some software. He took like 30 minutes to sell me on Kanban, and afterwards I binge-watched like all of your YouTube videos, so thank you, David. That was awesome. And my question is, I love the operations review as a retrospective, but on like a C-level or a CMO or even a VP level, for me it's very hard to sell the idea of a work-in-progress limit, because those guys don't like the limit part of it. Are there any tricks, ideas to keep them within the limit?
So they don't like being constrained like little kids, right? And that they think that they could always have some more, just like your dog. And it wasn't so terribly long ago, I was teaching a class and my colleague Anya Radzikowska was helping with the class. And during the class, in response to a question, I used the phrase, dogs, little children, and chief executives, they don't know what's good for them. And Anya immediately put it on LinkedIn. So that's the problem, but you know, how do you get senior executives who are essentially behaving like children to recognize? And I feel like it fits into these stories like the one I told where marketing had insisted that we had this market in Ukraine and it turned out to be very small. And it probably shouldn't have got selected. It wasn't as valuable as they were making out. And that creates some peer pressure that you need to bring the data, you need to show things for real. And so you need to be able to expose the effect of the overindulgence, right? So if we all eat too much chocolate, we might notice that we're, drinking too much red wine. And then you begin to realize, like, I can't hike in the mountains as well as I used to, or I can't ride my bike as far as I used to. I certainly couldn't ride it over the Gerlach Pass. Well, maybe if I cut down on the wine, that would fix the problem. So you need to be able to expose the issue and create an environment where there's some peer pressure. And years ago, I used to talk about the walking on the ceiling level of Kanban coaching mastery was to take a problem like the one you described and say, how could I set up the circumstances so that these people will recognize essentially their mistake and want to correct the behavior, and then it becomes their own idea. So I don't have a magic formula other than the meta pattern of you need to create the environment so that they discover that constantly asking for more ultimately doesn't produce the outcomes they want.
Yeah, in German would be lernen durch Schmerz. Huh? We can always make it worse. So you like more project? Of course, let's start more. 10 more, 20, 30, I don't know. Let's just do it. And then if you have the operations review and you're reporting on that numbers and you see that number like lead time and predictability go in somewhere you don't want to, then you can ask the question, so why do you think that happens, right? Maybe I was right.
Yeah, we can always make it worse to survive.
Yes.
So years ago when I worked at IBM as a programmer, I had a reputation as the guy they came to for the bug that no one could figure out, right? And in one particular case, so we were developing PC front end, Lotus Notes kind of stuff, but ultimately in the back end there were mainframes processing orders for physical PCs manufactured in the factory. And there was a mainframe in the Netherlands that was falling over about once every 7 days, and no one knew why. So I was tasked with finding out why is this mainframe falling over, right? So I gradually worked my way through the code trying to identify what might be the problem until I thought, you're the prime suspect. I put it in a loop of 10,000 and I made the mainframe crash every 7 minutes. Right? So then we got on a call with the Americans who were in charge of all the software for that mainframe, and they're like, so David, what makes you think you've actually identified the bug? So I explained the process and said, so once I thought it was this particular call that's producing the memory leak that's causing it to fail, I put it in a loop of 10,000 and I made it crash 10,000 times faster. Oh! This is 1994, right? It was just conference calls, no video. There was just a from the other end. And they fixed the bug. Took them a while.
Any other questions? Nobody? Not even from the ICS team? over there.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for the given examples and ways and approaches how to follow your not idea but approach. I hope this is not a silly question because I've not been in contact too much with your books or the methodologies you proposed. Is there a naming convention reason, or how do you see the parallelities between the Scrum logic and the presented content? So, I mean, the replenishment meetings, for example, could be explained as grooming meetings, right? And the operations review or retrospective you also have in the Scrum logic, or if the sprint reviews. Do you see, how do you differ or compare?
How would you do a sprint review with 900 people?
Fair, yeah.
So, just philosophically, everything's different. Some mechanics, we do get people in class and they're like, yeah, this is kind of like Scrum, but you don't have sprints. And it's just the mechanics that seem to be the same. But the fundamental philosophy is you start with what you do now. You walk into the organization, you don't change anything. You just map it. And then you start imposing some things that will cause some stress in that environment. Now, it could be a WIP limit, but actually WIP limits are, that's not for beginners. But for beginners, it might just be visibility, and visibility might be too much. But I think the key is teaching people what feedback really means and what outcome are you expecting. And the business focus from the very beginning that if you're in charge of a Starbucks, you understand that a customer walked in, they asked you for a cup of coffee. And there might be 2 or 3 people involved in taking that order, processing it, and delivering the cup of coffee, but they all know what business they're in. And getting people to identify with who asked for it and what did they ask for. And then when you get a bit better at it, and why did they ask for it? And everyone in that chain should understand that so that they can make much better quality decisions. So the focus is on just a bigger scope and scale. And not adding a whole bunch of people to hold your hand while you're doing it or employing anyone to police because there isn't a process. It's what we do here. Right? The whole concept was to start with the people in your organization that do stuff, just get them to make better decisions. Teach them how to make better decisions. And in the whole concept of self-managing, what that means is that individual contributors can make a whole bunch of decisions on their own without going to their manager to ask, would this be a good idea? Now, managers who worked for me used to talk about, once we'd introduced Kanban, it gave us the ability to look left. So imagine you're looking at the board and the tickets are going left to right. Looking left means you're looking upstream, and the point was that for the first time in their managerial career, they were able to anticipate better because all the time-consuming stuff that they used to do was all happening below them at this self-managing level with the team. So, you know, maybe if we all live long enough, the Scrum people will catch up with this. But I wrote this stuff down in 2000, it was published in 2003, the first stuff, and everything else has been an evolution from there. The first book was about managing the WIP. And then a very smart guy called Donald Reinertson took me for a coffee and he said, you know, if you can manage the WIP, it's probably even easier if you just limit it. And that's where the Kanban thing came from. Right? So stop worrying about managing it, just set a limit on it and manage other stuff. So I think philosophically it's very different. But you can look at some mechanics, particularly at team level, and say, well, it's kind of similar looking. but you don't do a retrospective with 900 people. We've got photographs of daily Kanban meetings with more than 50 people that take less than 10 minutes. Try doing a scrum with 50 people and get it finished in 10 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, David. Thanks also to all the speakers here on the floor. Wolfgang, David, and Conor McConnor. Robert, thank you for being here tonight. Before we close it up, just a small advertisement. We have the book, the German version of the book, can be bought over there at the back. The retail price in the store is 38 euros, and we offer it today for 25, so as a special for today. Don't tell anybody. David is also in the back, and he will sign the books if you want to. And if you want to be valued. And they're both here, so also Wolfgang can sign it, and you have 2 signatures for the price of 1.
Yeah, and one more thing. I have to. My wife asked me to send the kids now to brush their teeth. So es ist Zeit zum Zähneputzen. Also, danke.
Okay, this evening could not happen without the help of some fantastic colleagues. So I really want to thank the team from Isabella and Alina for supporting this, setting this up, all the technology, and also do all the organization around it. Also the people from the people engagement team, Elena and Lena, who's over there selling the books. So a big round of applause for all our colleagues here. And every week on Friday on 11 o'clock we have this, so we call it Agile Hogast. So I don't know if you know what Hogast means, but that's the Austrian word for a small talk. So we have this Agile Hogast, and there's this Agile Hogast team that gives me and also we each other lots of inspiration about all these subjects. So I want to thank them all for keeping up with this subject all the time. And of course, he's not here tonight, but Andreas Kranebietl, our CEO, as I called him a few weeks ago, we want to do this event with David Anderson. His first question was, of course, who's David Anderson? And then he said, do it and make the best event possible. So I hope we did something to do that as well. And last but not least, we want to invite you to some food and drinks. Food is over there, in the room over there. We have some sandwiches, drinks are everywhere, and I hope to see you soon. Thank you all for coming. Have a good and safe travels home, and hope to see you soon next time here on stage as well. Thank you.
bluest skies as if they thought of rain. I hate to look into those eyes and see an ounce of pain. Hair reminds me of a warm, safe place where as a child I'd hide and pray for the thunder and the rain to quietly pass me by. Whoa, sweet child of mine. Whoa, sweet love of mine. Whoa, sweet child of mine. Whoa, sweet love of mine. Whoa, sweet child of mine. Whoa, sweet love of mine. Whoa, sweet child of mine. Whoa, sweet love of mine.